Ma'am, I need you to hand that over. Now.
Officer Daniel Kowalski's hand was already extended before Amara Bell finished pulling the inhaler from her bag. She looked at him, then at the device in her own hand, then back at him, and did not flinch.
It's my asthma medication,
she said. Her voice was even, steady, in a way that made a few nearby passengers glance up from their phones. I need it before it gets bad. That's what they all say. He wiggled his fingers, impatient. Let's see it. She placed the inhaler in his palm without argument. On her wrist, half covered by her sleeve, a thin silicone band caught the bus's overhead light, the kind hospitals give out, printed with a red medical symbol. She didn't point to it. She didn't need to. It was right there. Kowalski didn't look down. The 47 bus rocked gently through the rain, wipers cutting rhythmic arcs across the windshield up front. Outside, Dorchester Ave blurred into strip malls and grey brick, streetlights just starting to flicker on for the evening. Amara had gotten on 4 stops back, soaked from the walk, boulder of paperwork tucked under one arm, an obituary program pressed flat inside it. She hadn't planned on any of this. She planned on getting home before dark. Turn it over, Kowalski said, examining the canister like it might confess something. No label, no prescription info. The label wore off. I've had it a year. Amara kept her hands folded in her lap. Call my pharmacy. CVS on Blue Hill Avenue. They can confirm it's mine. That should have ended it. Instead, Kowalski turned the inhaler over once more, slower this time, like the extra few seconds of scrutiny might change what it was. I've been doing transit patrol 9 years, he said, mostly to himself. I know what a real one looks like. A woman 2 rows back lowered her phone slightly. Not quite recording yet, just watching. A man near the rear doors shifted his bag onto his lap. The universal signal for, this is happening and I don't want to be involved. The bus rolled through a pothole and Amara's folder slid an inch on her knees. She caught it before it could fall. Sir, she said, I really do need that back. I can feel it starting. Before we continue, if stories about courage, justice, and people standing up for what's right inspire you, take a quick second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us share more powerful stories like this with people around the world. Now, let's see what happens next. He didn't answer. He was looking past her now, out the window, doing the math on how many stops remain before his shift break. Her phone buzzed in the outer pocket of her bag. She didn't reach for it. It buzzed again, longer this time. A call, not a text. The screen lit against the fabric just enough for the woman across the aisle to catch the name before it dimmed. Dad, do not natural. Amara glanced at it once. Didn't answer. Her jaw tightened, but not with fear of missing the call.
With something closer to, not yet. You're not fooling anyone with the paperwork trick, Kowalski said, nodding at the folder. Trying to look official. It's my grandmother's funeral program. Her voice cracked for the first time.
Not from anger. I was there this morning. For a beat, something in his face almost shifted. Then he straightened it back out, the way people do when doubt feels like weakness. What's happening? A woman near the front had finally raised her phone all the way, camera app open. 2 teenagers by the rear exit stopped talking and started filming too. A retired-looking man in a Red Sox windbreaker leaned out from his seat, opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then didn't. Amara's chest rose and caught. A short, dry "Ka." In the 3rd row from the back, a woman in scrubs under an open raincoat, Priya Nasser, off shift 20 minutes and headed home to a microwave dinner she'd been thinking about since 4 p.m., sat up straighter. She recognized the sound. She'd heard it 100 times in triage. Her hand drifted toward her bag, toward the badge clipped inside it, then stopped. Not my scene, not my problem. Let it play out. Amara coughed again, harder, and pressed a hand flat against her chest. She needs that inhaler, Priya said finally, though her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. That's not a stunt cough. Kowalski didn't look at her. I appreciate the concern, ma'am, but I've got this handled. He hadn't looked at the medical band. He hadn't called the pharmacy. He hadn't asked Amara a single question he actually wanted the answer to. He turned the canister over one last time, thumb rubbing the spot where a label should have been. No name, no script number, no pharmacy sticker. He said it like he was building a case file out loud. That's not how real medication looks. That's how a switched container looks. The bus slowed for the next stop. Through the windshield, red brake lights smeared across wet glass. Kowalski pulled his radio off his belt. "Base, this is Unit 14, he said, loud enough that the whole rear section went quiet to hear it. "I've got a possible narcotics situation on the 47, inbound toward Fields Corner. Requesting backup." Amara's eyes went wide, not at the accusation, at the word narcotics. Now traveling through dispatch, now becoming a record, now becoming something that couldn't be unsaid. The doors hissed open at the stop. Nobody got off. And in her bag, unanswered for the third time, her phone lit up again with the same two words glowing in the dark. "Dad, do not represent." The radio crackled back almost immediately. "Unit 14, copy. Backup en route, 4 minutes out." 4 minutes. Amara did the math without meaning to. 4 minutes was a long time, when your chest felt like it was folding inward, one breath at a time. She kept her hands still in her lap, the folder with her grandmother's program pressed flat beneath them, and made herself breathe slow through her nose. In. Out. Slower than she wanted to. Priya Nasser hadn't looked away since the cough started. She'd clocked out 20 minutes ago. She was still wearing her badge, clipped to the strap of her bag, and some old habit made her count Amara's breaths per minute without meaning to. 14, then 16, climbing. "Officer." Priya stood, one hand braced on the seat rail as the bus swayed. "I'm an ER tech. That's not fear. That's air hunger. You need to give her the inhaler back." Kowalski didn't turn around.
"Ma'am, I appreciate you trying to help, but this is a police matter now. It's a medical matter that you're making into a police matter. That should have landed. It didn't."
He was already looking past her, toward the front doors, waiting on his 4 minutes like they were the only clock that mattered. Priya sat back down, jaw tight, bone gripped but not raised. She told herself she'd wait for backup. Surely backup would ask the obvious question. Surely someone with a supervisor's radio code would look at a 17-year-old wheezing in a window seat and think to check her wrist before her lungs. She was wrong. Within 90 seconds of the second officer boarding, he was younger than Kowalski, moved like someone who'd learned to defer before he'd learned to question, and he didn't ask Amara a single thing. He looked at Kowalski. Kowalski gave him 3 sentences: unlabeled canister, evasive, uncooperative, and the younger officer nodded along like he was memorizing a script rather than hearing evidence. "We'll get this sorted at the next stop," he said, to no one in particular, already reaching for the radio to log it. Amara's stomach dropped in a way that had nothing to do with her lungs. He never even looked at her. She could stop this. 1 sentence. 1 name. 1 phone call finally answered. But if she said it now, in front of all these strangers with their phones raised, none of this would stay small anymore. It would become a headline instead of an afternoon. She wasn't ready to hand her father's name to a bus full of witnesses. Not yet. Not like this. The bus lurched forward again, back into traffic, rain streaking sideways now against the windows. Rainwater ran down the glass behind Amara in wavering lines, blurring the city until everything outside looked underwater. Somewhere behind Amara, a woman murmured to her seatmate, low enough that it wasn't meant to carry, "That's Marcus Bell's daughter. I swear that's her." Nobody reacted. The name meant nothing to most of the passengers, but Priya noticed the way Amara's shoulders stiffened, almost imperceptibly, and filed that away too. Amara heard it. Her eyes flicked once toward the voice, then away, toward the window, toward the rain. She didn't correct it. She didn't confirm it. She simply looked back at the rain. Her phone buzzed a 4th time. She still didn't answer. That was the part that unsettled Priya more than the coughing. Not that Amara was scared, that she wasn't answering a call from someone the phone itself insisted she do not ignore. People who were truly out of options answered. People who were waiting for the exact right moment did not. "Miss." Priya leaned forward again, careful, quiet, talking past both officers now. "Do you want me to call someone for you? Your parents? Anyone?" Amara shook her head, small. He already knows. She pictured exactly what that phone call would unleash. Sirens, reporters, cameras, a name that would swallow every other detail of who she actually was. She closed her eyes for a second and held on a little longer. 3 words. Priya didn't understand them. She filed them away anyway, the way she filed odd vitals she couldn't explain yet. Ask about this later. The wheezing had gotten louder. Not dramatic. Worse than dramatic. Mechanical, effortful, each inhale audibly shorter than the one before it. A man in the back stopped recording and lowered his phone, uneasy for the first time, like the joke of it had drained out and left something he didn't know how to watch anymore. "She needs an ambulance," Priya said, louder now, standing again, not asking this time. Not backup, not the next stop, an ambulance, now. Kowalski's eyes flicked toward Amara, just once. Long enough to register the color draining out of her face, the way her shoulders had started to curl inward like she was trying to fold herself smaller. Something in his jaw twitched. Then discipline won. He finally turned to face Priya fully, and for the first time there was something underneath his certainty, not doubt, not yet, but the beginning of a man doing arithmetic he didn't want to do. "We're 2 minutes from the station," he said. "She can be evaluated there. She might not have 2 minutes." He held the radio at his hip like it was already decided, and pressed the call button without breaking eye contact with Priya, as if daring her to say it again. "Base, Unit 14. Hold the ambulance request. We're bringing the subject in directly." Amara's head dropped forward, chin nearly touching her chest, and the sound she made on the next breath in wasn't a wheeze anymore. It was closer to a rattle. The rattle in Amara's chest didn't stop. It became the only sound anyone on the bus was listening to. Priya was out of her seat before she'd decided to move, dropping to a crouch in the aisle beside Amara's knees. "Look at me, Amara. Look at me." She'd learned the name from the murmur 2 rows back, and she used it now like a rope thrown into water. "I need you to try to slow it down. In through your nose, out through pursed lips. Can you do that with me?" Amara tried. Her lips barely shaped the motion. Her hand, resting on her bag, twitched toward the pocket where her phone kept buzzing. "Is that your phone?" Priya asked. A small nod. "Barely anything. Everything. Do you want me to answer it?" This time the nod came faster. Priya pulled the phone free. The screen was still lit. The same 2 words glowing against the dark glass, insistent as a held breath. "Dad, do not now." She didn't ask permission again. She swiped to answer and pressed it to Amara's ear first, out of instinct, then realized Amara couldn't hold it steady enough, couldn't speak past the sound her lungs were making, and so Priya brought it to her own ear instead. "Hello, my name is Priya. I'm a bystander. I'm with Amara. She's having a severe asthma attack, and an officer has her inhaler." The voice on the other end didn't raise. It dropped instead into something low and immediate and terrifyingly controlled. "Is she breathing?" "Yes, barely. She needs her inhaler back right now. Put me on speaker." Priya did. The voice filled the space around them, clear enough that Kowalski, still standing 3 feet away with the radio in his hand, turned his head toward the sound without meaning to. "This is Amara's father," the voice said. "I need whoever is holding my daughter's medication to return it to her immediately." Kowalski's jaw tightened. He didn't know what he'd expected. A frantic parent, shouting. Something he could manage, the way he'd managed everything else on this bus for the last 11 minutes. What he got instead was a voice with no wasted motion in it at all, the kind of calm that made his own certainty feel suddenly very loud by comparison. "Sir, I understand you're concerned," Kowalski said, raising his own voice slightly, more for the cabin than for the phone. "But this is an active situation. I have reason to believe. What's your name and badge number?" Not a question. Kowalski heard the difference and didn't like what it did to his stomach. "Officer Daniel Kowalski, badge 2271. He said it before he'd decided to. Something in the voice had simply pulled it out of him, the way certain voices do, the ones that have clearly been obeyed before, by people who had once been just as certain as Kowalski currently was. "Thank you, Officer Kowalski." A pause. "Not long. Long enough. I want you to look at my daughter's left wrist. There's a medical identification band. Have you checked it?" Silence. "Officer Kowalski, have you checked it?" "I've been managing the situation as I see fit," Kowalski said, and even as it left his mouth he could hear how thin it sounded, stretched over something with no substance underneath. That's not an answer. The bus had gone almost completely quiet now. Even the two teenagers who'd been filming near the rear doors had lowered their phones, not from boredom this time, but from something closer to unease. The sense of watching a conversation that had suddenly become far more serious than the scene around it. "Sir, I don't know who you are," Kowalski said, and there it was, the smallest crack yet, audible this time, a man reaching for footing on ground that had just tilted under him. "You're about to," the voice said. Not a threat. Worse than a threat, a simple statement of fact, delivered the way a person announces weather. "I need my daughter's inhaler in her hand in the next 30 seconds. After that, you and I are going to have a much longer conversation." Priya still held the phone at arm's length, and everyone near her could hear every word of it. She glanced at Amara, really looked at her this time, past the wheezing, past the sweat beading along her hairline, and something clicked into place that had nothing to do with medicine. The stillness. The way she hadn't corrected the woman who'd whispered a surname 2 rows back. The way she'd said "he already knows" like it was a fact she'd been carrying, not a hope she was clinging to. Kowalski hadn't moved. The inhaler was still in his closed fist, forgotten there, useless. "Sir," he tried again, weaker now, "if you could just— 30 seconds, officer. You're at 22. Kowalski looked down at the canister in his hand like he was seeing it for the first time. Looked at Amara, chest heaving, lips beginning to take on a color no one wanted to name out loud. Looked at Priya, phone still extended, the voice still waiting. "Who is this?" he said, finally, to the phone, and his voice had lost every trace of the authority it had carried 11 minutes ago. "Who exactly am I talking to?" The answer came without hesitation, without heat, without a single wasted word. "You're talking to the chief of police." Kowalski's hand opened before his mind had fully caught up to it. The inhaler dropped into Priya's waiting palm, and she pressed it into Amara's hand in the same motion, guiding her fingers around it, like she'd done this 100 times, which she had. Just never with a phone call like that one still playing in the background. Amara took the first hit with both hands shaking, held her breath the way she'd been taught since she was 6 years old, let it out slow. The second hit came easier. By the third, her shoulders had started to drop from around her ears, and the sound coming out of her chest had gone from a rattle to something that almost resembled breathing again. "There's a stop coming up." The voice on the phone said, "Quieter now, the edge gone out of it now that the 30 seconds had done their work. I'm 3 minutes away. Officer Kowalski, you will remain on that bus. Is that understood?" "Understood," Kowalski said. The word came out flat. Whatever had been holding his voice up for the last 11 minutes had gone somewhere else. The bus pulled to the curb. Nobody got off this time either, but for a different reason now. Nobody wanted to miss what was clearly still coming. 3 minutes felt longer than 3 minutes. Priya stayed crouched beside Amara, checking her pulse without being asked, murmuring small things. "Good, that's good, keep going," while around them the cabin had gone through something none of them had words for yet. The two teenagers near the rear doors weren't filming anymore. They were just watching, the way people watch weather turn. Then the doors hissed open again, and a man in a plain grey raincoat stepped up into the bus, badge already out, phone still in his other hand. He wasn't tall in the way that filled a doorway. He didn't need to be. He crossed the aisle in 4 steps and crouched down in front of his daughter, and for 3 full seconds, he didn't say anything to anyone else at all. "Hey," he said, quiet, just for her. "You did good. You held on. I'm okay, Dad." Her voice was still thin, but it was hers again. He touched her cheek once, checked her lips, checked the inhaler still gripped in her hand, and only then did he stand and turn around. Kowalski was already talking. "Chief, if I could explain the situation." "You can." Chief Bell's voice hadn't changed at all from the phone. Same register, same lack of hurry. "Start with why you didn't check her medical band. I assessed the situation based on—" That's not an answer either. He wasn't raising his voice. He didn't need to. The whole bus had gone silent enough that he could have spoken at half volume and still been heard in the back row. "You had a visible medical identification device on a minor in respiratory distress. Departmental policy requires you check it before treating a medical device as contraband. Did you check it?" "No, sir." "Did you call it in for verification before confiscating it?" No, sir. Did you contact a supervisor before escalating to a possible narcotics report? Kowalski's mouth opened. Nothing came out. This bus has interior cameras, Bell said, not unkindly, which somehow made it worse. Timestamped. I've already requested the footage be preserved. It'll show exactly what did and didn't happen here, in order, starting from the moment you took that inhaler out of my daughter's hand. Somewhere in the cabin, someone exhaled, not relief exactly, more like the release of a breath everyone had been holding since the confiscation. Sir, Kowalski said, and his voice had gone somewhere Amara hadn't heard from him yet, smaller, uncertain, a man watching the floor tilt. I made a judgment call. I believed I was following. You believed a 17-year-old girl with a documented medical condition was running narcotics through a public bus in broad daylight, and every piece of evidence that could have told you otherwise was sitting in plain sight. And you chose not to look at it. Bell's tone still hadn't risen. It didn't need to. That's not a judgment call, officer. That's a decision, and decisions have consequences. He turned, briefly, toward Priya. You're the one who called it in? I'm the one who answered the phone. She was the one holding on. Bell looked at his daughter for a long moment, something passing behind his eyes that wasn't for the cabin to see. Then he turned back to Kowalski. Here's what happens next. I can refer this to Internal Affairs tonight. Full review, formal complaint, your record, the footage, all of it, on file by morning. Or, he paused, and for the first time something almost like reluctance crossed his face. I can handle it through the department, quietly, and let this end here, tonight, off the record. The cabin held its breath again. That's not really your decision to offer, is it? Amara said. Her voice was still hoarse, but steady enough to carry. You keep asking me if I'm okay. You haven't asked me what I want. Chief Bell turned to look at his daughter. Really look at her. And for the first time since he'd stepped onto the bus, he didn't have an answer ready. So ask me, Amara said. What do I want to happen to him? Chief Bell didn't answer right away. For a moment he looked at his daughter like she'd just asked him something bigger than the question itself. Tell me, he said. Amara took a slow breath, the kind that no longer cost her anything. I don't want this buried. I don't want a quiet meeting where he apologizes to you and everybody moves on like it happened to somebody else. She looked past her father, at Kowalski, who hadn't moved from where he stood. I want it reviewed the same way it would be if my name meant nothing at all. Nobody on the bus said anything. Priya, still crouched beside her, reached over and squeezed her hand once, briefly, then let go. Internal Affairs, Bell said. Full review, footage, statements, all of it, starting tonight. Kowalski's shoulders dropped, not in relief, but the way they do when a person finally stops holding something up. The footage went where footage goes. Within a week, the bus company had confirmed the timestamps publicly at Chief Bell's request, not because a camera crew was outside his office, but because he'd said plainly, in a short written statement, that his daughter deserved the same transparency any other passenger would have received. The statement didn't mention his name before hers. Kowalski was suspended without pay, pending the review. The review took 11 weeks, longer than anyone found satisfying, which was, Bell told a reporter who asked, exactly how it should have felt. At the end of it, a formal finding of misconduct, mandatory retraining in medical device recognition and de-escalation, a permanent note in his file, and a transfer off transit patrol. Not fired, not erased. Held accountable in the specific, unglamorous way institutions are supposed to work when they're working correctly. Priya Nasser filed a formal witness statement the same week, the first time in her 7 years as an ER tech that she'd ever done so for something that happened outside a hospital. When a colleague asked her why she'd gotten involved, she said only, because nobody else was going to. She didn't think of herself as brave. She thought of herself as someone who'd finally stopped waiting to see what everyone else would do first. The department's new policy went into effect 2 months later. Every officer assigned to transit or public patrol would complete certified training in recognizing medical devices, alongside a required verification step before any confiscation involving a claimed medical condition. Internally, people started calling it the Bell Protocol, though Chief Bell asked, more than once, that they stop. They didn't. 6 months after the bus, Amara stood at a podium in a small community meeting room, not a courtroom, not a stage, just folding chairs and a water pitcher, and about 40 people who'd shown up because they'd read about what happened and wanted to hear it from her instead of a headline.
I used to think staying calm was the only thing I could control that day, she said. I still think that, but I want to be honest about something else. Staying calm isn't bravery. It's what you do when you don't have another option.
The bravery came from a stranger who decided my breathing mattered more than staying out of it. Priya, sitting in the third row, looked down at her hands. So if you're ever the only person on the bus who notices something's wrong, Amara said, say something. Not because you'll be a hero, because someone's counting breaths, and they might be the only ones counting. Afterward, Priya waited by the door instead of leaving. Amara found her there. You didn't have to come, Amara said. I wanted to see how the story ended. It didn't really. It just changed shape. Priya smiled at that. And for a second, neither of them said anything else. It didn't need filling. Every day, hundreds of people ride the 47 bus down that same stretch of Dorchester Avenue without knowing what happened there on a rainy Tuesday. The seats have been replaced twice since. The drivers have rotated through a dozen different routes. Most of the passengers will never hear Amara's name, but somewhere along that route, someone is breathing a little easier today because a stranger once decided that silence wasn't an option. Justice doesn't always start with a courtroom. Sometimes it starts with someone simply refusing to look away, and a single breath held on to just long enough for help to arrive. Have you ever been the only person who noticed something was wrong and had to decide whether to say it out loud? If this story meant something to you, consider liking it, subscribing for more stories about dignity and accountability, and sharing it with someone who still believes the truth is worth waiting for.